particular phase of the life as emerging adulthood. And why it is called emerging? Because even the WhatsApp online status is being checked.
Yeah. No, this in our generation, everyone has it off. The blue ticks are off, the online status is off, the last scene is off.
Schedule that I'm going to do this assignment at this time, and then you receive a phone call.
How do I fit into this completely new group? Intelligences. Do you think that certain people have certain inborn intelligences? Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Beyond Conversations. Until today, all our conversations on the show have been about how to get ahead in your career, how to get into the university of your dreams, how to be an entrepreneur, an engineer, and so on. To sum it up, they've been about academic and professional development, especially for college students and fresh grads. Today's episode, however, is going to be fundamentally different. It's going to be about the mind. We are all aware of the fact that the years in which we attend college are super precious. It's quite likely that it's the first time we deal with incredible head-on competition and are interfaced with the professional world, which is why college years can be tricky and intimidating. It's a journey of the transition from teenage to adulthood, and many people find that it affects their sense of self in very significant ways. So today, we are going to talk to Mansi Karanskar, a psychology practitioner who also happened to graduate with a computer engineering degree back in the year 2000. She was previously an IT analyst with TCS and shifted careers in 2018 to follow her passion in psychology and mental wellness. She has been serving as a consulting counselor at PICT Engineering College in Pune since July 2022. Providing counseling to around 200 students and organizing workshops on mental well-being for students and faculty. She operates MindFit counseling services, offering counseling both offline in Pune and online to clients in Australia, China, and various parts of India. With 4 years of experience teaching counseling psychology topics at the Institute of Holistic Healing India in Pune, she also conducts soft skill training for engineering and polytechnic students along with faculty training programs across technical colleges in Pune. It's an honor to have her on the show. Evening, ma'am. It's an honor to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Aditi, and good evening. I'm doing well, and thank you for inviting me on this podcast today.
Yes. Let's go straight to the questions. So, college is the first time that students have to deal with a completely new environment. It's the first time when peer pressure really begins to kick in. The most ardent question that students have is that how do I fit into this completely new group? How do I merge or mingle myself with the kind of peers that I have here, especially because they're from very diverse backgrounds? What do you think? How does one fit in? Is it really important to fit in? What is your opinion on this complete issue that students face?
Hey, a good question to start with. Also, we have to understand that for we call this particular phase of the life as emerging adulthood. And why it is called emerging? Because you're emerging from your adolescence, from your teenage into an adulthood.
Right.
There are a lot of changes which are happening, and one of the biggest changes is coming to a new setting. For a long time, you have been probably the student has been in their home, staying with the parents, staying in the same city, probably going to the same school, having the same set of friends.
Right, yes.
And suddenly, you find yourself plucked from all of that comfort zone which has been created and plopped into a new environment. Even though it is very exciting, no doubt it is exciting to be in a setting, isn't it? But you are suddenly, uprooted and you are put into a place where everything is new. New set of people, new environment, and then more of your thoughts are also new because now you have a certain kind of independence.
Yeah.
Right? So everything is new. There are a lot of changes which are happening.
That's true.
With this in the background, everybody wants to, kind of try to make their presence felt. Try to
Yes.
have that sense that I belong here or I fit in, or
Yeah.
and because of that, students try to do a lot of things simultaneously. There are a lot of stimuli which are happening simultaneously. So there is academics, there is new set of friends, and I think multiple set of friends probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just ones.
Yeah. That's true.
So there are exciting things happening, and from a different direction. Like it's a bombardment of exciting stimulus.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, it can be overwhelming at times.
It is.
Because see, you had a certain kind of academic system, and then suddenly you enter into a degree college, and then you have there is no disciplinary as such thing. You have to self-discipline yourself.
That's
A lot of assignments, a lot of new concepts are being taught. There is a sense of freedom. There is so many exciting things going on. So it can feel overwhelming at times.
It's true. Moreover, I think it's about overwhelming. How do I match up to all these diverse groups of friends that I have? How do I get to their level? Do they find me interesting? Those are, I think, the most common questions.
Absolutely. Because at times, this is the phase when you start assessing the judgments of people.
Yeah.
Because it is there earlier also, but it's more starkly visible now. That if you hear somebody saying a negative comment about you, you get affected very easily. Isn't it? So
Yeah.
some are real judgments, probably some are some assumed judgments, and then you don't know what to do with these judgments.
Yes.
And if you are not self-aware, I'm going to use this word self-aware, probably more than once in the recording today. But if you don't know who you are, then these judgments can really affect you badly.
Right.
And then it might you might question, everybody wants to create a position in the world. And then suddenly you might feel threatened, and you might feel misfit. Or you might ask the question that, am I okay? Why?
Right.
Why am I not a part of a particular group? Or why are they not talking to me? While they were talking to me till yesterday, now suddenly there is a change.
Yes.
So these can be very confusing. This can be a very confusing phase of life.
It is.
And it has to be handled with a lot of compassion towards self, I would say.
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, everybody tries to fit into it, but then you need to at times step back, look at the set of friends you have,
Right.
and then based on your experiences, probably save those set of friends, and only make friendship with those people who are really probably the set of people with whom you can be really yourself and not always be under the pleasing attitude.
Right. I think that clears a lot. But again, you said that you'll be using this term self-aware a lot of times in the interview. Can you tell us what it means to be self-aware, and how does one bring self-awareness?
Okay. So let us start with what. So self is what awareness is very common word which is being used. But self-awareness in a nutshell is the strengths which you possess, being aware of the strengths which you possess, which can be uniquely yours.
Yeah.
Right? So if Aditi has a particular strength, Manasi may not have it. But then that doesn't mean that I should feel sad about that. I may have another strength. So being aware of my strengths and also my shortcomings. Right? And not only knowing this, but also knowing that, what kind of person I am. Am I somebody who values certain kind of things? Or am I somebody who gets influenced easily? Or am I someone who needs help for taking decisions? Am I a problem solver? Am I somebody who needs lot of people around me to feel good?
Hmm.
So there are some set of personality traits which we call. One is introversion and extroversion, which is
Yeah.
very well known.
Yeah.
I like the company of people more than being alone, or I am more happy being on my own, and but I'm okay with being in a close set of friends. Or it could be in between that, which is called ambivert.
Yeah.
So being aware of this, or knowing that I'm very, I need to think a lot before taking any call, or I'm intuitive.
Mhm. Right.
So all these small factors add on to your self-awareness.
Mhm.
And most of the times, I would say that this is the age where you start exploring your awareness. So it may not be there earlier. It may be, budding, but it may not be completely blooming.
Right. So, coming to the next question, it's again a connection of this. We know the popular quote, birds of a feather flock together, meaning that people of similar abilities or similar intelligences often find themselves in a group, in a friend circle. What happens is that when you're not very self-aware and you're not very considerate of your own talents or your own abilities, people tend to modify themselves to fit in a certain group. Do you think that's beneficial in the long run? I personally think that in some ways it can be a good thing. For example, so if I'm not really great at programming, but I have a friend circle who are like pros at it. So I'm definitely gonna make the effort to, come to par with them. So maybe in a way it's good. But is it good in the long run?
Now, fitting in or conformation is a lifelong process. It's not just at your age or at the age of. Why do we need to fit in, or why do we have this need to conform? Because each one has this need to feel a sense of belonging.
Right.
We need to belong to probably a group or an institution or a company or a city, probably even, that. So this is a very innate need that we want a sense of belonging. And with that sense of belonging comes the need to, find our tribe, as you call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And, but it's not something which will happen overnight, right? To find that tribe or to find that set of friends or people with whom you have some common interest, probably, or, you have that vibe, probably.
Mm-hmm.
You have to probably go through a lot of steps.
Yeah.
So during this process, if in that process, probably sometimes you tend to overextend yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that is when you are trying to please somebody, even though when you know that I don't like this, but I am doing it. So now the intent here is completely different. But if you want to fit in and if you want to learn that skill, and that is one of the reasons you want to fit in, that is another intent altogether.
Right. Yeah. So it could be in two ways. I want to learn this, so I want to fit in, or it's I want to fit in, so I need to learn this.
Yeah, as perfect. So you have to be aware of why, the intent of why you are doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And once you have done that, you either overextend and sometimes it happens that some experiences make you withdraw suddenly.
Yeah.
Right? And when you withdraw yourself, then you probably experience isolation. And then suddenly life seems like, I have no friends.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So it is, you have to find that middle ground, Why am I trying to fit in is posting. The intent, why am I trying to fit in needs to be clear. And it will be clear once you start engaging in that process. It's not going to be that right from the beginning.
Yeah.
So once you start engaging in the process, maybe the things might become clear. why I want to fit in. But at times, if it doesn't, then it might create a messy situation.
So, so do you mean that there is a need for a lot of self-reflection, especially in this phase?
It should not be like, I'm going to self-reflect today. I'm going to do this today. It's not like, it's more like as you are in that process, you experience something which is different, which is new, right? Analyze that probably.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not as if you are doing it constantly, but when you have an experience which is new for you, which is different for you, it's the time to, kind of then reflect.
Right.
And then decide whether you want to keep on continuing the same thing or you want to change something.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. My next question is about building meaningful connections or relationships or friendships, especially for people who tend to overthink or who tend to get easily affected by what people say or do, or sometimes when things don't pan out the way they have planned. How to keep oneself from, just going on thinking about the same thing, and also, build these meaningful connections that probably will pan out the way you think they might.
As I said, that this phase of life, which we call emerging adulthood, is also known as a phase where, there is isolation versus intimacy. So it is, I'm not talking about the intimacy which is only there in a love relationship, but it is an intimacy where we find meaningful relationships.
Yeah.
Right? So this phase is basically where we try to, kind of extend ourselves, go out there, and try to build those meaningful relationships. But what is very important here is to understand that we need to have a set of boundaries. If we don't have those boundaries, then every other person might seem like a very good friend.
Yeah.
And in that process, you tend to overshare. You tend to overtrust. You are vulnerable there because you share something which the next day you might not feel comfortable.
That's true.
So when you talk about boundaries, I'm going to explain what boundaries are. But boundaries are something which need to be established slowly so that you know that, okay, this person is worth that, the ethos of this person probably, or the thoughts and values of this person match mine. So what I am going to share with this person is probably something which he may understand or she may understand.
Yeah.
So when you share your thoughts, values, and beliefs with someone, those are your mental boundaries. But if you just do it without knowing, then it might put you into a place where you might regret it later.
Right.
So creating a boundary. So boundaries are basically all 4 types. So we are always taught about good touch and bad touch.
Yeah.
That is a physical boundary. The touch and space boundary. You should not allow people to appreciate. But along with that, there are other boundaries which are, one is emotional boundary. So emotional boundary talks about expression of your emotions and management of your emotions. So I will give you an example that at times you are bored by someone's behavior and you consider that person to be your friend. But that friendship is newly established. And you feel that, oh, should I share this with this person that I did not like this? Or it might mess up the newly found friendship.
Yeah.
And then what happens is that it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
And that's true. And then probably that friendship has a residual feeling of will that person understand me, or what will happen if she comes to know and he comes to know my real feelings.
Yeah.
So that is where you need to have this emotional expressed well at the right time. maybe not at the same instance, but maybe when two of you or three of you are sitting together, that needs to be expressed and to be told that, boss, this is my emotional boundary. You can't call me names or you can't talk in this particular way with me because I feel hurt.
Right.
Yeah. If this is not done, then your emotional boundary is eroded.
Yeah.
Many a times, I think in this phase, emotional boundaries are very fluid, and most of the times, students get hurt or they feel bad and they then do not express, and then it comes out in the form of anger sometimes, or in the form of bitterness sometimes later on, and that's probably breaks the friendship. And that. So being aware of creating that emotional boundary is very important. Emotional boundaries and mental boundary, as I said, are thoughts, values, and belief systems. Like, many of the students come from a very traditional culture and families, and they have very strong value systems. And at times when they come into this environment, they experience freedom and their values are challenged.
Yeah.
And they do want to go out with their friends, but then their values are stopping them from doing that. Well, so it's very difficult because, as we said, that it's the need to fit in, but it's also you have to decide whether you want to break this mental boundary or not.
That's
So we'll talk further on the boundary. I will explain more detail later on. And there is one more boundary which we need to understand here, and I think many students find it difficult to hold this boundary, is the time boundary.
Yes.
Yes. So I have decided in my schedule that I'm going to do this assignment at this time, and then you receive a phone call.
Yeah. Then it's gone.
But as a replication, what happens is that assignment was important and it had to be submitted the next day. And when you did send that,
Yeah, I just have an insight on that. It's not so much that you will not submit the assignment. It so happens that, okay, I decided to do this assignment at, let's say, 9 p.m. And then I get the call. Then I'm talking till 10:30. And then probably I will sit till 12 or 1 o'clock to complete that assignment. That's what actually usually happens.
and at 12 or 1 o'clock, you are probably tired or you're stretching yourself or you're anxious about whether this will be completed on time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're frantic, probably.
Yeah. Yes.
And this is where, you need to create that time boundary. Again, if you don't go out with your friends, you're going to certainly get the missing out feeling, the FOMO.
Yeah.
Right? So creating that time boundary does mean that you know how to let go of some things.
Certain things, yeah.
Yeah, and value your own time. So if this habit is not inculcated at the right time, then it really becomes difficult in the senior years.
Yeah,
So,
that is you. Yes.
so yes, that was about boundaries and effective communication of those boundaries.
I think it's a very new concept in our culture, boundaries, because what I've found is that in most friendships or relationships or any kind of connections, it's like friendship is supposed to be such a godly concept. It's like, if you're setting boundaries, what kind of a friend are you? And that, I think that's one more thing that completely, draws the line between hostelites and localites as well. Because localites are people who have to run home, and hostelites are people who are always there. So the form of feeling that localites get is out of the box.
Yeah. Do explain what is the what does a localite feel like when
Yeah. So I'll give an example. For example, I'm a localite and I have friends who are all hostelites. And then it's just natural that they have a lot more time to, they'll probably have dinner together, they'll be able to study together, they'll be able to, do late nights at the library together, and I am going to be at home. And in some way or the other, then you start having clashes with them that, okay, am I a part of this group or not? So yeah, that's one more thing that, that tends to happen.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think this is a very common which must be existing and which has been existing for quite some time.
It is.
But that's where, you need to have this time boundary, or even somewhere conveying how you feel about it. Like the emotional boundary we talked about, that, that, yeah, you are having fun and I'm missing it. So let's, probably next time when you are doing this, let me know in advance so I can plan to be with you.
Yeah.
So rather than feeling that, a feeling of left out, or, at times it might feel that, I'm being left out purposely, or at times it might feel that, oh, I can't join them because I'm at home. But just, you may not be able to join them every time, but you can join them at times. So maybe, expressing it to them so that they also will adjust for you.
Yeah, that's true. Let's go to the next question. This one is about relationships. College is the time when many people, formulate their first ever relationships, and sometimes they really work out well, sometimes they don't. Maybe you have different timings, you have some clashing schedules. So when things don't work out, first of all, how to deal with that, because you are in a challenging time. You know that there are, let's say, 5 or 10 things that are ahead of you. So how to, probably deal with the grief that relationships that don't work out bring, how to get out of relationships that are toxic, and how to keep managing oneself when things don't work out.
Yeah. So this is, as I said earlier, that this is the phase when you make meaningful relationships. The relationship could be good friendships, the relationship could be good mentor-mentee relationship, or social bonding, or romantic relationship. I have met students who get obsessed with someone, and then that affects their entire college life. Not just that academic year, but the entire 4 years. If it happens in first year, the rest of the 3 years. And there is a sense of loss, a tremendous sense of loss when this happens. Because if it works out, it's wonderful. If that relationship doesn't work out, then there is loss of time, loss of other meaningful relationships which could have happened. And in a way, it is a type of grief, because loss is pain.
Yes.
And as one says that there are steps in grief, the first step is denial. And that's when, one starts to stop, one gets highly obsessed.
Right. Yeah.
If you see the other person with some other classmate, then it's like, it seems like the end of the world. Or it seems like the major betrayal. So because you are right now in that denial phase that, it cannot happen with me. It should not happen with me. It cannot happen with me.
Yeah, that's true.
I put everything in this relationship. And the question then starts is, where did I go wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the self-doubts are like, they are shouting in your ears, all those self-doubts. And so that is the first step, of denying that, मैंने तो कुछ किया नहीं है. I have done everything right. I have to get her back or get him back.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to stalk, I need to obsess, I need to follow, I need to do everything first.
Yeah. It's not even, I don't think people consciously think about it. It's just something that happens.
It's very unconscious. And with social media, I think that is like multitude.
Yeah, that's true. Because
I had
I'll just give this. So if you do happen to be if in this situation, and then you have common friends who you're following on social media, then it's like again a completely third level situation where you are stalking their friends and your friends, and then it's a complete mess.
Yes, even the WhatsApp online status is being checked.
Yeah. No, that's in our generation, everyone has it off. The blue ticks are off, the online status is off, the last scene is off, everything is off.
So, like it becomes like it's at multiple levels. It's not just physical, but it's and that creates a lot of psychological stress. I have to say that because if A is following B and B is a common friend, and if you are not being liked for a post, then so much is read in that one
Accent, yeah.
one action, and that creates so much psychological stress, a lot of overthinking basically, and it's like a loop. It's a loop, and you keep on thinking, and then it leads you nowhere, and then you start feeling like a victim.
That's true.
Yeah. And what I've also observed is that in a relationship, one of the person is the one who initiates a breakup.
Yeah.
And the other person, if not aware of it until that moment, is in shock when that happens.
Yeah.
And the person who initiates may move on faster because the process of breakup has been going on in that person's head for a longer time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then they will possibly move on quicker. And for the other person, that move on may seem catastrophic, that I'm affected so badly, and that person is just
completely fine.
Completely fine. And that creates more stress. So does it mean that I was more in love with that person than that person was with me?
Yeah.
But you have to understand that the other person is processing the breakup already. While the one who has received it, the breakup notice, is in shock. And that is the beginning of that process. So they don't want to take more time.
Yeah.
And then again, that also brings victim feeling.
That's true.
So this because when you are in that phase, you cannot see all of this, right? You have to reflect on all of this because you're in midst of that emotion.
Yes.
You can't reason. You can't. Your rational mind is completely shut off.
Shut off. Yeah.
Your emotional mind is completely in charge, and you are in that setting. So, what I normally suggest, I also share this, but I also suggest is to give yourself some time to get over this. And it helps if you have a person in your life who can just listen to you, not give you any solution, not give you any sympathy, but just listen. But the flip side of this is that if that person is listening, is listening to you, you might fall in love with that person also.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that and immediately replace. Right? So your pain is not healed, but it is replaced with some other person. And that is really, what happens. It's when you get out of one relation, before getting over it, you get into another relation. And this, I don't know whether I'm correct or wrong, but this seems to be a trend.
Yeah, it is. But maybe moving a little deeper into this, the thing is that I think it's habit, that you're in the habit of having someone around who you can, completely confide in, always talk to, always expect to understand you. And I don't know, it just creates the sense of security, right? To be in a relationship, it creates a sense of security. And suddenly when you realize that, okay, this is not there, that's why people tend to, go from, okay, I need the sense of security, I need the someone to talk to. So again, there are two things that happen. Either you keep talking to that person and you keep trying to convince them that no, this is not right, this is not happening, or you say that, okay, let me find a sense of security somewhere else. But I'm not sure how sustainable that is anyways. Either ways.
Exactly. So it is not sustainable. And at times, the one who is listening also feels a burden that, because the other person is heartbroken, it might come out of obligation at if there is these mixed signals which are going on. And it doesn't end well. It doesn't end. And the person is more hurt than before.
That's true.
So here, especially, take time. I understand the need of safety and security. Each one, as I said, that sense of belonging is so, and you feel that companionship only and only with that one person. And in the absence of that person, then you feel lost. And you want to replace it immediately. But giving yourself time to just feel safe and secure with oneself first, before feeling safe and secure with the other.
Yeah.
What? And giving time and not moving from one relationship to another, just jumping. Because all these unhealed emotions are going to come out or are going to be a baggage in the next relationship.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I will summarize it that, it is easily possible to feel victimized. It is easily possible to fall in love again, or what is called a rebound. It is easily possible. Yeah, it is easily possible to feel lost and feel insecure during that period. But that is the time where your friendships are truly tested. Yeah. Because that is the time when you need people around you who just be with you. Do nothing else but be with you. And that person also needs to understand that, it is going to take a while. It's not going to be like, overnight. Give yourself to come out and feel the emotion of sadness. This is one thing, Aditi, I would like to add here. There is this aversiveness to feeling sad, aversiveness to feeling hurt, aversiveness to feeling bad. Everything has to be good.
Yeah.
And then you have that aversiveness, this feeling of sadness is something you don't want, right? Who wants to? Yeah. So that again is going to make you feel that no, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to. So it's okay sometimes to feel sad. It's okay sometimes we feel bad, hurt, disappointed. To feel the emotion completely and then.
Right.
But if you sit in that emotion for a long time, then absolutely you're going to be in the victim mode for the next few months.
Yeah, that's true. Again, does this in some way connect to how resilient you are as a person? And I think, again, the same question. Sit with it, understand your emotions, be comfortable with, being complete yourself, be comfortable with feeling secure with oneself. How does one do that? How does one build that?
For it starts basically with your family. I have to say this, that that sense of security first has to come from your family. If you feel safe and secure in your family settings, then that sense of security which you're looking outside, it's okay. It's not that intense. It's not do or die.
Right.
Because you already are safe and secure. maybe not in this city, maybe at home, back home, wherever you come from. But
Yeah.
you have that strong connection of security with your family.
Mm-hmm.
But if that sense of security, of that connection is insecure, then this connection, the newly built connection, and the loss of that connection is going to be doubly going to go bad with one person.
Yeah.
Because there's nowhere to go. That person may be completely. So how to build the sense of security is, again, I'm going to go back to the self-awareness part.
Mm-hmm.
That when you know that, the need of feeling secure is very high in me. Right?
Yeah.
So I cannot rely on one person, on one set of friends only. I need to have different set of friends who make me feel secure. Yeah, this is one thing, which is the external security we are talking. And internal security is that you understand that why do I get insecure? Why do I need this? Why do I have to have this intense need of security?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anything. I'm going to connect it with anxiety somewhere down the line, because sense of security is opposite to survival instinct, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if my sense of security is not as strong, that means that I'm fearful that something will happen to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that means that I'm anxious constantly. Anxious of loss, anxious of getting bad results, bad outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
There, resilience comes into play, of course, but resilience is something where resilience also is something where you fall down, you get up on your own, you brush away things, you tell yourself that okay, you fell down, it's okay, that let's see how to go ahead. Yeah, at times it doesn't happen. When a person falls down, you look here and there to see if somebody is going to come and pick you up, and then say the same things, that it's okay, you're fine, you will be okay.
And I mean, somewhere, for most people, they know what they need. They know that, they need someone to come and say that you're okay. They know what they need, but they can't do it to themselves.
Yeah. And they might do it to other person very easily. But not themselves. But then again, you can ask a very good friend to just do it to you. And just tell them, I need this right now. Can you just be there for me? That again is, having again that emotional bonding with that connect with. Or secondly, is you tell yourself that
yeah, you know what you need, you better
yeah. It's not end of the world. Yeah, something bad has happened with you, certainly, but that it's not the end of the world. It's time that you feel that emotion completely, get out of it.
Right.
The more you do this, the sense of security is going to become more and more, it is going to increase. It's not something which is going to be there or not there.
Yeah.
It's a gradient, it's a spectrum. I may feel secure today, I may feel less secure tomorrow, I may feel more secure today.
Right.
It's a scale. And one needs to develop the scale.
That's true. Moving on to our next question. It's a completely new topic. Intelligences. Do you think that certain people have certain inborn intelligences? How does one identify one's own intelligence?
No, okay. Okay. So I'm going to share a theory. There was this psychologist.
One more thing. What does intelligence mean? I think that's also something you should explain.
Okay. Okay. So, see, the definition of intelligence in our culture, and when we start with our culture, is IQ, intelligence quotient. Yeah. And that intelligence quotient is more dependent on the mental age of the student versus the physical age. So if your physical age is 10 and if your mental age is probably 13, then your IQ is higher.
Okay.
How are you going to find it out? When IQ is tested, you are given set of questions related to your age. You resolve them. Then you are given a set of questions which are higher, till the point where then the student cannot answer. So that is the mental age. Okay?
Right.
So your physical age, mental age, together it calculates your IQ. Okay. Now, most of the times IQ is considered as intelligence in our culture. It's not.
South Asian culture.
Absolutely. It's not so. Okay. Intelligence is much more than that. Intelligence, like I was wanting to share about this psychologist called Howard Gardner, who came up with multiple intelligences. Where did IQ come from? IQ was, I think, if I remember correctly, during World War, there was a French psychologist who came with IQ because they needed to recruit people.
Yeah.
And they needed people who could resolve problems, who could take decisions, who are problem solvers. And at that time, I think it was at that time. But then the intelligence theory, kind of evolved, and we came up with multiple intelligences. The IQ is more related to only one kind of intelligence, which is called logical mathematical intelligence.
Yeah.
It is an intelligence which only talks about reasoning, about numbers, about solving numericals, all of these things. And reasoning, of course. But our IQ is very closely related to only just intelligence.
Yeah.
But other than that, what other intelligences are there? One is linguistic intelligence. Yeah. People, you may find people who are fantastic orators, who are very good in writing, who are very good in words, right? But they may not be as good in neurological mathematical intelligence.
Yeah.
But they are very good in linguistic intelligence. So what Gardner says is that we all have multiple intelligence. And each person intelligence varies. Some have linguistic intelligence, which is high. Some might have logical mathematical intelligence, which is high. Third is your musical intelligence. Right? All those singers, composers, music conductors, instrument players, so who have a good sense of sound.
Yeah.
Right? Then comes your fourth intelligence is interpersonal intelligence, wherein you are good with understanding other people. You are good with leadership, basically carrying on people together.
Yeah.
That now, have we ever talked about this intelligence and have we appreciated? Because it is always sidelined.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's one more reason why people aren't able to find it at all. It's the reason why people are not able to appreciate they're having this kind of an intelligence, not being able to identify it, not being able to find it and do anything meaningful with it.
Exactly. I will just explain all the intelligence very briefly and then talk about how together it makes a person.
Yes.
And how it also defines your career choice, also how it defines your learning style. Your intelligence decides your learning style also. So we'll go there. So one of the intelligence is body kinesthetic. Although sports persons have a very high body kinesthetic intelligence.
Okay.
Athletes, sports person, or artists who use their body, fingers, all of them are very high in that body kinesthetic intelligence. they cannot sit quietly. They always need to, be on the move. Right?
Yeah.
At times it might be looked down upon that, this child cannot sit quietly.
Yeah.
Very restless. He cannot, he has a very low attention span when it comes to solving academic mathematics.
Academic questions. Yeah.
Yeah. But because we are not aware that, probably he has this other intelligence which is higher.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not tapped at all into.
Yes.
For that, then naturalistic intelligence, that is so, I would say, under developed. Naturalistic is when we talk about nature, nurture, we talk about plants, we talk about animals, we talk about the ecosystem, right?
Right.
All those botanists, all those researchers in that pure science field of botany or zoology, or people who do research in... I have a friend who does research on king cobra.
Okay.
I wouldn't think of doing that because I don't have that intelligence.
Right, yes.
Right? But this kind of intelligence also exists. Animal communicators. Have you heard of the term animal communicator?
Yeah. Yeah, I have.
Yeah. So all of these are people who have very naturalistic intelligence. Then there is intrapersonal intelligence. Intrapersonal is where you have a fantastic intelligence about your own self. So mostly introverts are people who have very high intrapersonal intelligence. So all that, knowing about yourself or in general about the existence. There is another intelligence called existential intelligence also.
Okay. And what does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So basically the existence of life. So one of the things which, one of the careers is the cosmologist. So existential talks about the existence of life on the earth itself. What does it mean? Now, something I think nobody has even heard about. That there are such kind of...
No, it's definitely, yeah. We haven't.
I haven't heard about it. But all of these multiple intelligences are there within us. Just the thing is that only one intelligence is focused on, the logical, mathematical, and then your entire career is defined by it.
Yeah.
And then the students probably who have good logical, mathematical intelligence, but their other intelligence, one or two other intelligences are high, may feel lost.
Yeah, because what I think is that you're pursuing something and that's not exactly in coherence with maybe your natural talents, and then it's a complete misfit, which you are constantly dealing with all the time.
So there is so much struggle. Imagine the struggle which that person must be going through, and the pressure, the peer pressure which might be experienced by that person from a person who has a natural intelligence for logical, mathematical, that domain.
Yeah.
So without having the awareness, when you experience peer pressure, it can be absolutely threatening your whole entire existence, and it might create a lot of anxiety.